Imagine you're a kid in the 80s. You got your pockets full of quarters and you're walking straight into your favorite arcade store, ready to find a new adventure to sink your teeth into. But in the distance, you hear the screams of the dam seeping into your bones, and you're curious. You walk deeper into the arcade store and find at the very end a new cabinet with a grown person playing it. You stand on your tippy toes, you try to push them away to look at the game, and what you find is nothing like you've ever seen before. You see people strapped to the wall, strapped to torture devices, chunks of their flesh flying off, the cacophony of screams, sounds, and a horrifying music all pollute your ears, and it starts to make you feel really afraid. And as a kid in this time, you've never seen something like this. You look up at the marquee at the cabinet, telling you very proudly what it is. That, ladies and gentlemen, is Chiller by Exidy. That very game I described was none other than the first gore game ever made. And with something as graphic as that, you would think that it would be a bigger controversy, right? And you're wondering why I've never heard of this game. Well, I'm here to tell you the story all about it. We're in 1985. If you remember, Exidy released Death Race sometime around 1972, and they created a lot of revenue for themselves out of that controversy. But that money started to dwindle alongside the arcade craze. Arcades were popular, but they were not as popular as they once were, and they weren't a surefire way for a company to make money anymore. The home console market was emerging and everybody was shifting their direction to that, but Exidy couldn't do that. You see, some 10 years after Death Race, Exidy was hitting a low point. They didn't have as much money, their hardware was outdated, so they couldn't actually compete with anybody else. After some tweaking to the hardware that they did have, they managed to make a series of light gun games, and in one of them was Chiller itself. There's little information about the development of the game itself except for a Kotaku interview done to Big Ptolemy, one of the programmers of Chiller. Basically, they were told by the big ups to go all out with it. Make Chiller as controversial as possible. I'm paraphrasing and not taking directly from the quote. H-Bomber guy, please don't get me. It is not stated in the interview, but what I'm guessing is that since it was going to be the last few projects that Exidy was going to make ever, they just wanted to allow the programmers to go all out with it, perhaps hoping that the controversy would cash in on some money. And boy oh boy did they shoot for the stars with this one. Let's talk about the game in itself, okay? Chiller is very much your standard light gun game. You have a gun, you shoot things, rack up points. You have 4 stages and 2 of them are the biggest controversial stages because you're actually shooting human beings, very graphically seeing their body just deteriorate. Mind you, this may not look that big now, but for the arcades at the time, this was really big. They legitimately made very human-looking humans. And even worse, they just put a topless lady in there. Yeah, like you can see her boobies. Not that I mind, of course, but like besides that, you only just go through those 4 stages. And if you actually manage to get the secrets, you get a secret bonus stage, which is just racking up more points and then the game starts over. Nothing too special, really. But boy, do we have to talk about the sound design. Like I talked about how actually very graphic and kind of horrifying the graphics are, let's talk about the sound design. The sound design is just hell, okay? If you've ever played this game through an emulator or in the actual arcade, that is the sound of hell. I'm not likely to put the sounds in the actual video because they are technically big jump scares, but holy shit is it loud. When I say it's noise pollution, I really do mean it, and I think that contributes to the factor of this game being a little eerie and creepy. Because you see, even me as a horror veteran, I find this game to be kind of unsettling. It's probably because an arcade game to me is not supposed to look like this, much less sound like this. And in the background of all the screaming and the shooting and everything, you have this like slowed down version of this song that I forgot the name of, but it's very popular. And it just gives it this feel that you're not supposed to be looking at it. It's a strange feeling of fear. And if I feel a little unsettled as an adult, I can't imagine how it felt for a kid. Let's go back to that moment. You as a kid watching and witnessing this for the first time. How would you feel? I feel like a child would understand what's going on, and it would feel so strangely bad about it. Before you know it, there's like a bunch of kids gathering all around you, looking at this circus and feeling the exact same way you do. And one of them pipes up and says, dude, I'm gonna have nightmares. And that's when you realize you're gonna have a tough time sleeping. For a week, you cannot sleep properly. Maybe it takes 2 weeks, who knows? You actually stop going to the arcades out of fear of finding that cabinet again. But one day after those 2 weeks, you feel brave. You have more quarters in your pocket, you're determined to go into that arcade store and find Chiller. So you walk in with a lot of bravado and you find that the cabinet's gone. Completely gone, like a dream, as if it had never existed. So what actually happened is that you need to like this video. Just kidding. I mean, if you want to, I would really appreciate it. Thank you very much. What happened to Chiller? For the longest time, some people thought it was a dream. And legitimately, you will likely find YouTube comments going, so this game did exist. It was like a lot of people witnessed the cabinets firsthand and then they disappeared. Here's where we get into the part where Chiller was way too controversial to even be bought by people. When I say that they shot for the stars, I mean that they missed completely. What ended up happening was that the game was too controversial for arcade store owners to even consider buying it. And the ones who did buy it ended up shelving that thing within like a week after the complaints started to rain in, no less. So it's kind of funny because Exidy tried to make a controversial game, and in doing so, they hoped they would rack up the same money that they made with Death Race. But the problem was that they made it too controversial to even land on some tables. And just like that, Chiller was completely gone from like history. Exidy released a bunch of other games for a couple of years and then completely dissolved out of existence. And literally there was nothing else to it. Chiller and Exidy just disappeared together. And it wasn't until the internet that people actually started to talk about this game again. There were some rumors that some arcade cabinets actually reached to third world countries, but I don't trust Wikipedia on that. So that is how Exidy's story in gaming history ends. They did not go out with a bang, and I wouldn't even say a whimper. They went out with a, huh? Credit what credit is due, Exidy made a variety of arcade games that I am sure were many people's childhood. And they did manage to be part of history. They made 2 controversial games, the earliest of their kind, and they lived for long enough to tell the tale. Not many people remember Exidy, but if I can put it in the cultural zeitgeist for like a second, I will, because it's such an interesting piece of gaming history. 2 of the earliest controversial games that exist were made by the same company. Like, that is insane to me. Even if I personally find Chiller to be a little bit unnecessary and a little boring, I still appreciate the guts that it had to just exist. I have to appreciate the boundaries that it pushed, even though people's sensibilities weren't quite ready for that. But now, the story of Exidy in this channel is forever closed. This has been your Captain Leona, and I will be seeing you guys later.